The subject of this video is Trump's most recent tariff threats. Before delving into that topic, I would just note that the government will release tomorrow morning, November 27, the Personal Consumption Price Index for October. The Fed favors that price index over CPI. If the number is higher than expected, the odds of a Fed rate cut at its December 18th meeting should go down. It's barely at 50-50 now. The current forecast for the PCE price index is for a 2.3% year-over-year increase, and that would be for the 12-month period ending in October. And the core PCE price index is forecasted to be up 2.8% over the same 12-month period. The month-to-month increases, which are also important, are estimated at 0.2% for the broad PCE price index and 0.3% for the core. I'm still buying Treasury notes in the secondary market maturing in the October 2025 to January 2026 with the most recent purchases. With the YTMs of those buys about 9 basis points below the low end of the current federal funds range of 4.5 to 4.75. That kind of YTM makes sense only if the consensus opinion among bond investors is that there will be no more than one 25 basis point cut, and that would not be in December, but sometime during the first half of 2025, and even that is not much more than 50-50. A Treasury note with a 4.41 YTM maturing in December 2025 would look pretty good to those investors with a 25 basis point cut in the federal funds range at the December 18th meeting, which would take the FF rate range down to 4.25 to 4.5%, and would take the 4.41 YTM note maturing in about a year above the midpoint of that lower range. And it would look even better if there was another rate cut in the first half of 2025. But that's not how the bond ghouls see the future right now. Investors are currently assigning a near 0% probability that Trump will actually start a trade war on his first day as president, which he has now said that he intends to do. While I have managed to severely limit my exposure to Trump's constant stream of false statements and demagoguery, I need to pay some attention to his actions and threats to act that will influence my investment decisions. I am aware after reading several news stories at business websites that he has just recently threatened to raise tariffs on exports from Mexico and Canada to the U.S. by 25% unless those two nations do what Trump tells them to do. The fact that this action might violate the U.S. trade treaty with those two countries is not material to Trump, and no law or treaty will restrain him. And the democratically elected governments in those two countries cannot be seen by their own populations as buckling under and taking a knee to our bully in chief. And their response to those U.S. tariff hikes will most likely be to impose the same tariffs on U.S. exports. Mexico and Canada are the two largest importers of U.S. products. Together, they account for about 36% of all U.S. exports in 2023. The total U.S. exports to those two countries was $676 billion in 2023. I will leave a reference to the support for what I just said in the more section below. Tariffs are taxes paid by importers for U.S. tariff. That would be the U.S. importer. who then passes along the tax to American consumers who ultimately pay it. I know that Trump has convinced approximately one half of the U.S. voting population that Mexico, Canada, and other foreign countries actually pay the U.S. tariffs, something that he has said many times, but that is just false, and it's demonstrably false. The U.S. importer pays the tax. Unfortunately, it is relatively easy to convince tens of millions of Americans to believe what is not true and to reject as false what is true. That situation exists at probably the highest level in the United States in our history right now. The Nonpartisan Tax Foundation summed up the problem in an article titled, quote, "How Will Trump's Universal and China Tariffs Impact the Economy?" published on November 8, 2024, that also cites a number of studies on this subject. I'm quoting from part of that article as follows, quote, "A tariff is a tax on imported goods applied at the border when a business or person in the U.S. purchases a good from abroad. Tariffs increase the price of foreign-produced goods, incentivizing consumers to switch to domestically priced goods and providing domestic producers room to increase their prices." End of quote. The U.S. consumer pays both a higher price for the imported product, and the domestic manufacturer will raise prices as well, which is what happened when Trump imposed tariffs on washing machines during his first term. Since dryers are frequently bought at the same time, both the foreign and U.S. manufacturers increase their prices on dryers as well, seeing an opportunity to make more money, even though Trump did not levy a tariff on the foreign exports on U.S. imports of dryers. Excuse me. This is discussed in a Wall Street Journal video on YouTube, which I will link in the More section below. So what happens if Trump actually does what he says he will do, which is now viewed as highly unlikely, if not impossible, by the stock jocks who view it as just more Trump bluster? If he does do it, Mexico, Canada, and other foreign countries will retaliate. They're not going to bend the knee to Trump. Trade will slow down, leading to layoffs in U.S. Manufacturers, while domestic manufacturers also raise prices to almost equal to the amount of the tariffs imposed by Trump. And why wouldn't they increase prices, since competition from other countries will have virtually dried up if you add 25% tariff to their exports to the United States, or even more for China? Shortages will then occur, in parts and other items caused by supply chain problems, and they will appear soon after the tariffs are imposed, leading to price increases as domestic manufacturers scurry to find replacement parts from domestic producers. The beauty of the tariff hikes from Trump's viewpoint and that of his party, when and if implemented, is that his followers will not even realize that the tariff tax is being paid by them. And it will raise revenue that would avoid and may even pay for a tax decrease for the billionaire supporters like Elon Musk and many others who supported Trump with tens of millions of dollars in the last election. Maybe maybe Mexico and Canada would do something that is not material to them to persuade Trump to back off and claim some kind of Pyrrhic victory. I doubt that's going to happen. It would simply make Trump look foolish, and I don't think he wants to look foolish in front of his cult members. And after all, it is not Mexico's problem of illegal immigration into the United States. It's the United States problem and securing its own border. So threatening Mexico to do something about the U.S. problem is not going to sit well down there, for sure. For whatever reason, the bond ghouls are pricing no more than a 125 basis point cut in the federal funds rate, using not the federal funds futures contract prediction, but what investors are now receiving for purchases of Treasury notes and bills. One reason is that the bond ghouls are not as confident as the stock jocks that Trump will not actually implement the tariff threats. They're actually taking it more seriously. And that the Fed will simply not be in a position after Trump acts to cut more than 25 basis points, if that, as they wait to see whether his policies create conditions for another surge in inflation.